All right, the LILJ is back for another edition of the Weekly Crossbar Podcast. Ellis Joshua joined alongside me as always by Coach Wink. Coach Wink, how you doing here this afternoon?
Ellis, I'm doing fine. Thank you for asking. Very excited to talk about week four's podcast and then about what's going to be happening tomorrow at Cold Spring Harbor High School. So, very excited about this podcast.
Yeah, we definitely have a lot going on tomorrow that we'll get into just a little bit later. But as we always do, we're going to take it back to last week, going back to the games that the LILJ was on site for over the past week or so. So we got to go back to April 19th, and we're starting off out in the Hamptons over at Westhampton Beach High School, where we saw a matchup between two contending teams in Suffolk County in Class C between Westhampton and Sayville. And so Sayville, they came into that game with only one loss. Same thing with Westhampton because they were coming off of their first loss against Bayport just a few days before that. And this one ended up going to the Golden Flashes by a score of 12-8. So it was a competitive game, but Sayville, I think from the second quarter onward, kind of had control of the game. Westhampton, they were always within reach, but Sayville, they prevented that run from Westhampton, and they kind of held a 3 to 4 goal lead for the most part throughout that game and ended up winning by 4. And just talking about some of the players that really stepped up for Sayville, we got to talk about Olivia DeSimone, who she's had a phenomenal season thus far for Sayville. She was 1-7 in that game, 7 assists for DeSimone. So she is really showcasing her distributing abilities. And I think like she's kind of, in my opinion, I think she's made a really nice, her and Morgan Farrell have made a really nice pairing because I feel like a lot of her assists, the majority of them seem like they're going to Farrell. So Farrell's really been the beneficiary of the assisted goals. I think that's been a really good pairing for Sayville. But 1-7, I mean, you talk about having a day. DeSimone definitely did in that game on Saturday.
Yeah, DeSimone obviously showing her abilities. Florida State University commit. She's going to be Florida State. Matter of fact, is going to be up here. Came up here. Was at the Ward Melville game this weekend. Is going to be at the Gains for Brains, and their coaches are starting a program in the ACC. And DeSimone's getting ready for the ACC play because she looks like a big time recruit. The kid Farrell, obviously, is such a big transfer for Sayville coming back from Kellenberg. But what I've noticed in the games I've seen Sayville play, everybody's worried about Baffardi and McNamara, and the other girls are stepping up. McNamara's obviously at 27. Baffardi's the Carolina commit, the 26. But Farrell and DeSimone are getting their opportunities, and obviously they are cashing in on their opportunities. Livingston and Meehan, I thought, did a great
Yeah,
job
defensively,
defensively.
100%.
They were the other POGs, right?
Yup. Yeah, Tessa Meehan, 27, and Lucy Livingston, the senior committed to USF.
Yeah. So it's funny. I was just saying to Ellis before we jumped on the podcast. I am very much looking forward to a future game of the week on Friday, May 2nd, when Sayville hosts Bayport, which will arguably, I don't even think it's going to be arguably, will be for the 1 seed in
Yeah,
the
I think
Class C.
that'll be factual. That game will be for the 1 seed in Suffolk Class C.
And that's one of our Gates game of the week that we slotted at the beginning of the year, knowing that those two teams were going to be at the top of the heap. And that's going to be a game for the ages out at Greeley School in Sayville, New York.
Yeah, 100%. And also, I was told back when we were scheduling that game, so I think they're going to be incorporating the youth from the Sayville community in that game with some pregame festivities. And also, I believe it's Teacher Appreciation Day. So there's a couple of things going on also before the game to kind of look forward to. So it should be a really, really fun day next Friday.
Uh, I'm excited. Wow, it's already next Friday, huh? So it's a week from today?
Yeah.
Holy cow. This season's flying by, brother.
No,
And our girl Jill was out at the Oyster Bay Bethpage game the same day that we were April 19th, Mrs. Wink's birthday.
that's right. That's right. Jill was out there, and Bethpage, they got a win in that one. They won that game 12-7. So good for the Bethpage girls getting a win. I know Jill got to see them a few weeks prior as well against St. Dom's, but Bethpage getting the win over at Oyster Bay in that matchup. So
Who
yeah,
are the POGs?
we definitely had boots on the ground back last Saturday. But yeah, the POGs in that game. So it was Gabby Severin, it was Grace Miller, it was Sam Casaro, and it was Caroline O'Connell.
OC. Love it. Grace Miller is going to Loyola, right?
Yup.
O'Connell heading to Stevens Tech in Hoboken. For those of you out there that haven't visited that school, what a beauty. Great return on your investment. ROI. Remember those initials. Stevens Technology Institute. It is an amazing school. What a view of the Manhattan skyline. Have you ever been there, E?
So actually, I've never been on the campus, but one of my best friends from middle and high school actually went there, and I've been in the vicinity because he's actually still living over in Hoboken right now. So I've like been in the area, but never actually on the campus itself.
An absolute gem. If you have an opportunity to go visit, first of all, great school academically, gives you great opportunity. And because it's so close, it's only a path train to
Yep.
Manhattan. The
Yeah.
kids get great opportunities, right? They get to experience Manhattan and they also get to, get internships, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So after Saturday, there was a game we went to because I think Ellis just wanted to continually bet me on that Long Island was going to beat everybody off the island. For those of you who
Oh,
don't know
no.
it, Coach Wink was raised in Westchester County. So I have an allegiance to my Hudson Valley troops. So Rockland County's very own Suffern was coming down to Wantagh to take on the Lady Warriors.
That was a game. I will say that. I'm down some more Mr. Sausage because of that game over in Huntington. But yeah, that was a fun game to cover though. I mean, a 10-9 win for Suffern in overtime, and that one was really a back and forth game. I mean, if we're talking about Suffern, starting with them, you got to start with the junior committed to Maryland, Michaela Fay. She had 5 goals in the game and she scored the game winner in overtime. It was just 12 seconds into OT. They won the opening draw of overtime, and Faye came right down the alley, scored the game-winning goal to give Suffern the win. But that was a fun game to cover. And Wantagh, they were right there. They were actually up 9-8 in the fourth quarter with just a couple minutes left. And I was thinking they would hold on in that one, but Suffern, they got the game tying goal scored by Liz Torres and then ended up winning it in overtime on the game winner by Michaela Fay.
Got to give a little shout out to the Suffern team. They've been in the state playoffs forever. Their head coach, John Callanan, who's one of the gems of the game, just a quality coach and quality man. And he built a program up in Suffern, New York, which is in Rockland County. So when you're going from Westchester, you go over to Tappan Zee Bridge, like you're heading up the thruway, and it's right up there. And that kid Faye, dude, she's special.
Yeah, she is the real deal.
Yeah, she is absolutely a special talent. Wantagh, though, Wantagh Southside, baby. What do you think? That's the C championship in Nassau. Anybody else gonna give him a shot? What do you think?
Yeah, I think right now I would feel pretty good about saying a Wantagh Southside County final. And Wantagh, they've been in a number of close games this season. Like the Suffern game lost in overtime. They played Southside recently too, lost in overtime. Um, they played Massapequa yesterday, lost that game by a goal. So it's like they're right there. They just got to find a way to get over the hump and close out those games. But I would say I still feel pretty good right now about a Southside Wantagh County Championship in Class C.
I'll take an overtime in a county championship. That'd be fun.
Hey, if it's an OT, you know what that means. IG Live.
Let's go. I tried to go YG live yesterday, but it didn't work.
No,
We'll
no,
talk,
that
we'll
was
talk about that in a few. And it would have been a cool ending because the ending of that game was pretty cool, but
Yeah, yeah. I still posted the ending though.
And then Sunday, we didn't have any games to watch. So what did we do? We had to watch, I think
It was Sunday.
we had to watch like the NBA on television, right? We had nothing else to
Yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah. You watched the NBA.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, we didn't have
Sunday.
any lacrosse though.
No, no.
We found something to do Monday at noon though. We did because the parochials were still on vacation.
Yeah.
They get a long Easter break. It
So
was
wait, yeah. So what was it? So it was the previous week. They were off starting Wednesday, correct?
yeah, so Wednesday through this week.
Right. Yeah,
And
that
the
is.
publics went back to school Monday. So the only people that were off were the parochials. I guess Connecticut was off because Wilton came down to play the number one team in the country, St. Anthony's. So Wilton played the game was at noon.
Yeah, I think that was one of those things where I think that we didn't find that game. That game found us.
That's true. We were just looking for something to do on a Monday at noon. You had nothing to do? Well, we'll always go watch the Lady Friars because they're a pleasure to watch. But being the number one team in our rankings and having a number one team in the nation, it's pretty cool to follow a team like that on Long Island. And now Bayport's up in the national rankings.
Yup.
Smithtown West is. Sayville is. Cold Spring
Evil.
Harbor is.
Hmm.
I'm sure that'll change after this week, but SA baby, keep winning. What was the final on that one?
Yeah, final was 15-3. St. Anthony's over Wilton. And I mean, we talked about it before on this podcast, of course, but that St. Anthony defense is something to behold. It really is. I mean, because in this game you hold a team like Wilton to 3 goals. When we cover them over at Rutgers against Morristown, they pitched a shutout in the second half. Against Darien in the fourth quarter, when the game was tied up at 8 going into the fourth, they pitched a shutout. That Friar defense is really something to behold. I mean, there's so many players that you could talk about, whether it's Sophia Novelli, Julia May O'Connor, Meg Langton, Devin Lang, Adi Mitty, Kelsey Gorman. I mean, there are so many players that you can talk about on that Friar defense. And it was just another, I thought, elite showing by their defense in that game against Wilton.
Yeah, Jess Black also in the net has been very, very good for the
Yeah.
Lady Friars. That team's fun to watch. They got their hands full tomorrow though. We'll talk about that in a little while. We'll see if they can keep their run alive. Monday evening, Ellis was solo. You could talk a little bit about your solo because I had to go to where was I Monday? I had to go somewhere.
No, Monday you were hosting a big time webinar.
Yes, that's right. I had to well, I watched the webinar. That's what I did. I watched the top tier webinar, which is something that's one of our sponsors we should talk about. You want to learn about recruiting? Check out top tier recruiting because that woman, Brooke Magnuson, she is full of knowledge. Got to hear the Maryland coach, Kathy Reese, and the Georgetown coach, Caitlin Phipps. They both spoke about the do's and don'ts of recruiting. They do educational platform webinars every month. Pretty cool and very inexpensive. So, any of you guys out there that listen to this podcast, you want to educate yourself on the recruiting process, check out Top Tier Recruiting. But that's where I had to go. But Ellis went to it was overtime, right? Connetquot Longwood?
Yeah, it was. So we'll talk about that one first. But we had 2 games basically going on simultaneously that both ended up going into overtime. But yeah, we'll start with the Connetquot Longwood game. So a Suffolk Class A battle and Connetquot, they came away with the win 12-11 in overtime. And it was Hayden Murphy who ended up scoring the game-winning goal for the T-Birds in OT. But again, that was another game where it was really back and forth. I think the largest lead in that game by either side was only 2 goals. And so actually going into the fourth quarter, it was Connetquot up by 2, but they got shut out in the fourth quarter. Longwood scored the 2 goals that they needed to tie up the game. And then they actually had a chance to win it in the final seconds of regulation. They actually had a free position opportunity with Brooke Morris, but credit Connetquot's defense for getting the stop. and they were able to force overtime. They kept it tied, and in the end, it was Murphy with the game winner, and Sydney Elizalde had the assist as well on that play. But that was a really enjoyable game to cover. A big win for the T-Birds. Just talking about some of the other players that stepped up for them, besides Murphy, who had 2 goals in that game. But Elizalde, she was 5-1. Bianca Graham, she had 2 goals and 2 assists. Jamie Elliott had 2 goals, also some big defensive plays as well. Jenna Lineman, the freshman, she scored a goal, was big on the draw once again, also had some big defensive plays. Got injured towards the end of that game though, so hopefully she's doing okay. Because she didn't play in the overtime, so hopefully she's doing all right. But Jenna also had a really good game. But again, that was a fun game to cover.
Yeah, Jenna Lyman is definitely somebody that next year we'll be talking about a lot when she starts the recruiting process. But it was good to see. She's done very well on the draw, the 2 games we've covered.
Yeah, definitely. Just want to also run through some of the Longwood players that stepped up. Ava Franco, she was 4-2. Madison and Goglia, she had a hat trick. Ava Rivera with 2 goals and Olivia Hollingsworth with 2 assists. Brooke Morris also really good on defense, I thought.
Yeah, Longwood's looking for that big win. They haven't come up with that one big win this year. You never know. Maybe it's today because they're going to be playing arguably the number one A school today. They're playing the Huntington Blue Devils, which we'll talk about in a second. But Jill, our trusted Nassau correspondent, went to a doozy at Plainview Old Bethpage versus East Meadow. What happened in that contest?
Yeah, so that game, East Meadow, they actually jumped out to a 4-0 lead, but they were unable to hold on. Plainview Old Bethpage, they come back and they end up forcing overtime. And then in the overtime, they end up winning it 8-7. It was a game-winning free position goal by Heather Glykos, the freshman. And that was her second goal of the game, proved to be the game winner to give Plainview Old Bethpage the win. But that just seemed like a really entertaining game as well. I was following along on the stories once I got home from the game. I was covering. So it was Heather who had the game winner, and she was, of course, a POG in that game. Also, Olivia Wong, who's a 2029. She was 3-1 in that game, a POG as well. And then Marley Cohen, another 2029, really good on the circle as well as defensively. So those were your 3 POGs in that game, but a nice comeback win for Plainview Old Bethpage.
I tell you, 3 young guns that helped that team beat East Meadow. Good win for the program.
Yeah, 100%.
Love to see the young guns stepping up in big moments, right?
Yeah, we've talked about that before on this podcast. Seeing young guns step up in meaningful minutes in meaningful games. Love seeing stuff like that.
You know, it's interesting that the following day was our game of the week where we live streamed it. And when I showed up there, Ellis and Travis, our play and color guys, were sitting on the top row of the bleachers. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, yeah, we're going to
Hey,
do the game from out here. And I'm like,
hey,
really?
hey, it was a nice day. Got to take advantage of the weather.
I tell you, I thought it was awesome. It was almost like the play-by-play and color guy are sitting in the crowd, like you were sitting with the fans.
Yeah, you ever see, remember when like on Met games they would always do like one game during the season where you'd have Gary, Keith, and Ron and they'd be calling the game like from somewhere in the outfield.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's
Yeah.
cool. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Uh, But I thought it was really good. I enjoyed it. I sat next to you guys and I was passing on like updates to other games that were going on that I was getting information from various sources. But that was probably one of the top games we've seen all year. I mean, we've seen a lot of good ones, but I hadn't seen Shoreham and Harborfields play, and I
Yeah,
think we
well, we
broke. I
thought
think did
yeah,
we
we thought
break a POG record?
I think we tied a POG record. I have to double check because I think I still have the picture. I think they tied a POG record with St. Anthony's from last year at Games for Brains. So I think 8 ties the record, but I have to double check to confirm.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay, that's pretty cool. But that game, Harborfields was kind of in control. What would you say? 96% of the game.
Yeah, well, I think they really gained control towards the end of the second quarter when they had the buzzer beater, a big save by Olivia Usanio, and they turned it into transition. And Bellamont Leon scored at the buzzer,
Oh, right.
assist by Sawyer Scarola. So they ended up going into the half up 6-4. And then I think they kind of utilized that momentum and it helped them into the third quarter. And they really started to control the draw circle, which ended up being a difference for them and helping them gain a lead. So they went up by 3 or 4 goals or so. And then in the fourth quarter, they were up by 3. They were up 9-6 with just over 4 minutes remaining. And then the game flipped because Shoreham started winning draws and they were able to take advantage of those possessions. And they scored 3 unanswered goals to tie the game up at 9. And it ended up going into overtime. And in OT, Shoreham, they completed the comeback. It was Charlotte Erb scoring the game winner, and Reese Marcario had the assist. So Shoreham came back from down 9-6 to win it 10-9 in OT.
Yeah, I got to tell you something. Before we jump on the winners of the game, Shoreham, I need to talk about a few unbelievable efforts. Well, I'm going to start with Nora Ruddy, the freshman. I
That's a
mean,
straight baller right there.
that kid was uncoverable. And I said something to after the game. I went over and spoke to the Shoreham coaches, Coach Femmel and Coach Sanchez, and I said it was very, very smart to shut her when they started shutting her, and they did a good job shutting her in the second half.
Yeah,
Um,
they changed. Yeah, they started shutting her with Corso. So then she was kind of quiet down the stretch there.
yeah, well, they were keeping the ball out of her stick, which was a
Yeah.
smart move because
Yep.
she was uncoverable at times.
Right.
You're going to be hearing about this kid, Nora Ruddy, for a while. But the kid that really impressed me was Olivia Usania, the goaltender who's going to Richmond to play field hockey.
Hmm.
She's an absolute bowler, stopper, athlete. Dude, she
Clutch.
clears the ball. I've never seen a girl clear the ball and throw the ball on the line. I would say her and Soskin and Farnan, I guess Black from St. Anthony's, Hankey from Rocky Point.
Hmm.
The 25 goalie class on Long Island is awesome.
Uber talented, without question.
And Olivia's not even going to play college
Right.
lacrosse.
Right.
She
Yeah.
could,
She's
she,
playing field hockey in college.
she could play anywhere, that kid. That kid's awesome.
Yes. Yes.
I'd love to see her play field hockey because I would imagine she's got to be a bull in a china shop.
Yeah, and Harborfields, they had a great season in field hockey too back in the fall. I think they lost in the Long Island Championship.
Okay, makes sense. She's supposed to be one of the better field hockey players on Long Island. I'm not really up on field hockey stuff, but I'm going to learn as much as I can because a lot of these laxers play field hockey, and I'd like to follow them in the fall. But that was quite a game. You could talk about the Shoreham kids because, I mean, your 2, 4, 6, 8 POGs. Am I counting that right?
Yeah, 8 POGs.
Every one of those girls played unbelievable. And the one kid that I said, 23,
Yeah,
Jablonski,
yeah, Leslie Jablonski, junior committed to Fairfield.
she had the check that
Yep.
started the game-winning goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kid's a baller too. That's a good group. That Shore Money Room is a really good group. I know they had a tough loss last night to Rocky Point by a goal, but I don't think anybody really wants to play them in the playoffs.
No, not at all. And we talked about it last week on the pod when we saw them against Smithtown West, the way they moved the ball. And that was one of the things we were talking about on the broadcast were the assisted goals. And it showed itself in that game against Harborfields. And Maddie Hirsch, she had 4 assists in that game. Also, shout out to her. She recorded her 100th point in that game. We were made
As a
aware.
sophomore.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if she ends up with 300 points when she's
Yeah.
old.
Yeah, 100%. But why don't we continue this conversation, Coach Wink, in part number 2? Because we're running low on time here, but I'm sure we still have some more to say on this game and dip into some of the other games we covered as well. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back shortly coming up with part number 2. Thanks for everyone that tunes in.